This is part one of a 5-part series called SICKCARE, an exploration of how modern healthcare slowly drifted from a system oriented toward healing into one economically dependent on recurrence, chronicity, and long-term management. This series is not an attack on clinicians. It is a reflection on incentives, structures, and the quiet consequences we all live inside. We call it healthcare, but when you step back and follow the incentives, what emerges is something closer to sick care, a system that stabilizes beautifully, treats relentlessly, and quietly depends on conditions that never truly resolve. This isn't a conspiracy, it's a systems drift, and it's written into the incentives. The system speaks the language of healing, but it runs on recurrence. U.S. healthcare now consumes nearly 18% of the national economy, close to $5 trillion annually. It is one of the largest engines of economic activity in the country. Entire cities, employment markets, and investment portfolios now depend on the steady utilization of medical services through hospitals, clinics, and specialty centers. Dialysis centers, diabetes clinics, cancer institutes, joint replacement mills, and rehab after rehab after rehab. None of these systems are financially structured around making themselves unnecessary. A healed population is not a growth market. Over the past 6 decades, U.S. healthcare spending has risen from about 5% of GDP to nearly 18-19%, reflecting not just medical growth, but a fundamental economic reorientation toward disease management. Why recurrence is more profitable than resolution. Modern American medicine excels at stabilization, symptom suppression, procedural throughput, medication management, and risk mitigation, but it is structurally weak at addressing root causes, restoring physiological confidence, rebuilding agency, resolving long-term threat signaling, or teaching nervous systems that they are safe again. The business model does not reward resolution. It rewards duration, not because clinicians are unethical, but because the system pays for activity, not transformation. Chronic pain as the perfect forever condition. From a regenerative lens, chronic pain is not simply damaged tissue. It is a sensitized protection system. It is a learned threat state. It is a story reinforced by fear, language, expectation, and care pathways. From an economic lens, chronic pain is something else entirely. Endless medical visits, endless imaging, endless procedures, endless medications, and endless rehab cycles. It is SICKCARE's most reliable subscriber, not because anyone intended it that way, but because unresolved threat is highly monetizable. The flywheel of SICKCARE. Here is the loop few people name out loud. Modern life creates biological stress and disease risk. These risks are medicalized. Medicalization becomes proceduralized. Procedures become financialized. Financialization demands recurrence. Recurrence reinforces identity as damaged. Identity entrenches chronicity. The loop restarts. This is not a system structurally organized around resolution. It functions economically as an extraction model built on unresolved vulnerability. Why prevention is structurally weak. True prevention pays slowly, profits modestly, requires cultural change, and reduces future medical demand. A single ICU admission can generate more revenue than years of prevention counseling. So even when prevention is celebrated rhetorically, it remains structurally underpowered. The incentives never fully align with upstream healing. The GDP trap. Here is the uncomfortable truth few people like to name plainly. If America suddenly became dramatically healthier, hospital revenue would fall, major employers would shrink, healthcare stocks would drop, regional economies built around hospitals would destabilize, and political pressure would surge. So the contradiction becomes unavoidable. How can a system be economically dependent on sickness and still be fundamentally oriented toward health? This tension is the heartbeat of sick care. The regenerative alternative in chronic pain. Regenerative care does not ask, how do we control this symptom? It asks, what does this nervous system still believe is dangerous? What story has the body learned about itself? What meaning is keeping protection switched on? What experiences would teach true safety again? How do we restore trust, movement, adaptability, and agency? Regenerative care shrinks markets. Sick care expands them. Only one of those is economically attractive at scale. The quiet moral injury. Clinicians feel this contradiction every day. We celebrate discharges and then quietly worry about downstream access, billing, productivity targets, and outcomes dashboards. We heal people inside a system that quietly depends on people not staying healed. That dissonance burns people out faster than any workload ever could. A patient who understands pain differently, moves without catastrophic fear, interprets sensation with flexibility, reclaims authorship over their body, no longer needs endless reassurance, is not a strong long-term revenue stream, but they are a miracle of biology and meaning. That is the line sick care cannot economically cross without redesigning itself. The problem is not that anyone wants people to remain sick. The problem is that healing at scale is economically destabilizing in the current model, and so we manage. We stabilize, we suppress, we monitor, we bill, we repeat. In a system where sickness fuels the economy, the most radical act of medicine is not treatment, it is restoration of agency.